Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2021 Jeep Cherokee, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster base plate kit with removable arms. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is going to work for you. This is what your base plate in your Jeep's going to look like whenever you're not using it and you're not towing it behind your motorhome. And honestly, I think it looks pretty good, about as good as it possibly can, to be honest. These sides here simply just come out through these openings, which in our case we had factory tow hooks, so really doesn't look out of place. Even some of the other Jeeps that don't have the factory tow hooks, they still have kind of just this opening with a panel there that you can punch out or cut out, and it'll look very similar. So not too bad by any means. And even your other things like your wiring connector and the breakaway switch, the style of the grill makes it kind of easy to cut and kind of hide those components a little bit better. One thing that this base plate gives us is really easy spots to mount up that wiring connector and our breakaway switch. So they already have brackets on it, which makes it really convenient. You know, you don't really have to figure anything out or fabricate anything along those lines. That's not something you see with every base plate, so definitely a good touch. And one of the really important things a lot of people are worried about is how easy everything's going to be to use. And this is a really straightforward setup, and that's partly due to the fact that it uses removable arms. So whenever you're ready to hook up to your tow bar and do some flat towing, you're just going to take the removable arms, kind of push down on them and rotate them, and they'll lock into place. And that's going to give us the attachment points that we need to hook our tow bar up. Whenever you're ready to actually hook your tow bar up, it's going to be relatively simple. Everything's more or less a quick connect. The safety chain openings there, they are a little on the smaller side, but not a huge deal. It's still manageable to get it in there. And what you're going to do is line your tow bar up with that removable arm. You're going to put the pin in, line it up, and clip it down. And that's really all there is to it. The base plate is going to be compatible with most Roadmaster tow bars and other tow bars as well. Other manufacturers have different ends, but the good news is there's chances are pretty good there's an adapter available that you can change out and allow a different brand tow bar to pair up with your base plate. Before we get too carried away checking out the base plate and kind of talking about it, I figured it would be useful just to kind of go over the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Jeep down the road in the first place. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components. The first one is going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. The tow bar is going to be that second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your motorhome. The third main component is going to be safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. These are going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what that's going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your motorhome to the back of your vehicle, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. All right, and what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your vehicle whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping to bring you to a quicker, more complete, and predictable stop. There is a couple more components that are not absolutely necessary, but I would highly recommend. One of them being a vehicle charge line kit. And what that's going to do is essentially trickle charge or maintain your Jeep's battery whenever you're flat towing it. And that's because a lot of the braking systems are going to draw power from your Jeep's battery to operate. And I believe I've heard in the past some of these Jeeps have some issues with their electronic steering whenever they're getting flat towed, and the battery will get drained down and cause some issues there, and potentially cause some unsafe conditions with the Jeep wanting to kind of get out of control. And so maintaining that battery is really important, especially with this case. It's going to keep it topped off, and that's not something you're going to have to worry about. This is what your Cherokee is going to look like whenever you're all hooked up behind the motorhome, and I like it. Everything's pretty spaced apart evenly, and gives it an organized look. You know, you can take a quick glance back here and make sure everything is going on right. And I particularly like the setup with the Nighthawk tow bar. And I say that because our base plate has some really wide attachment points, all right? So they're spaced out pretty far, which is gonna help the vehicle track better and kind of stay true behind your motorhome. But whenever you get so wide like that, it kind of closes the gap or the distance in between your Jeep and the motorhome. And so having the Nighthawk has really long arms is going to kind of help put a little bit of space back here, and that's important. It just kind of helps you know, pull your Jeep better down the road and makes turning a little bit easier when you have a little bit bigger of a space. And not to mention too, the Nighthawk just comes with a bunch of cool stuff. You know, it comes with the safety cables and the wiring connector and things like that. So, you know, everything's going to work with the base plate, and just a few less things you're not going to have to worry about grabbing separately. But other than that, a nice setup. You know, I definitely wouldn't hesitate to use it on my own Jeep if I had one. You really can't go wrong with it. Compared to some of the other base plates, they're all pretty similar. I'm not gonna lie, how they work and things like that. I feel like the Roadmaster has a slight advantage as far as the appearance goes. It's just a little less noticeable, but you know, really just gonna depend on what you like and what you're looking for. Again, I like this setup. Being a Roadmaster base plate and having a Roadmaster tow bar kind of just makes sense to me. It just kind of pairs up good if that's what that's something you're into. But you know, when it comes to actually getting this installed, definitely not the easiest one I've put on, nor the hardest. It does take a little bit of time though, so I'd say set aside probably a good 4 or 5 hours, you know, being honest with you. And as long as you stay focused, it really shouldn't give you any issues. When we're doing the install, I'll give you a couple pointers and tips along the way that I use to help kind of speed things up, so hopefully that's useful to you. But with that said, why don't we go ahead and just pull into the garage and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Jeep. You're going to pop your hood, and since the fascia needs to come off to get the base plate on, first thing we're going to do is remove this plastic radiator cover here. So this is going to be held in place with some plastic fasteners. We're going to have one here in the center. So you take a trim tool or a flathead screwdriver, pry underneath the head of it, and then under the base, and that'll pop it out. And then on each side here, we're going to have 6 more plastic fasteners. And these are going to just be kind of spread throughout. And so we'll repeat that same process here to get the rest of them out. If the head comes out without the base, not a big deal. You can always just pull them out separately and kind of push them in back together. So I'll continue to do that for our remaining push pin fasteners. And I want to mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're going to do to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. So you're going to have 3 kind of here on the front. And then 2 more up top here. So one will be right here. Then one in this corner back here. And I already went ahead and got the other side removed. So once that's done, you should be able to lift up on our cover. Get it removed and set it off to the side. With that radiator cover, plastic shroud out of the way, that'll expose a T30 Torx bit screw right here in the corner. We need to go ahead and get it removed. Underneath our Jeep here, we need to get rid of, or remove rather, this protective panel. And on each side, we're gonna have 4 10mm head bolts. So we'll grab our socket, get them removed. You have all of them removed. This should just slide out and we'll set it to the side. If you come just in front of our front tires, we're gonna have these splash shield deals here, and you need to get them removed, and these are gonna be held in place with rivets. And so to remove the rivets, you can take a drill bit and just drill out through the center of them. So we're gonna have 3 total that we're gonna need to do. With those out, you can kind of pull it this way, set it to the side. Now if we come to our front wheel well, along this edge, we're gonna have 4 fasteners we need to pull out. In our case, we have 2 push pins and then 2 8mm head bolts. You may just have all bolts or all push pins. Kind of every vehicle is a little bit different, but regardless, you need to get them removed. So same deal with these. Actually, in this case, since there's not a lot of room to work, a flathead screwdriver actually kind of is a little better choice here to get these out. So I'll keep prying on them. And we can move to our bolts. Again, 8mm. It does help to turn your wheels all the way to one side. Gives you a little more room to work. And once we have those out, what we're able to do is take our fender liner, kind of peel this back, tuck it up out of the way. And then we need to remove or start to remove this plastic trim piece. So with this, there's some fasteners on the inside, and maybe a little tricky to see, but these white ones here, you can kind of squeeze in on the ends of them. Start to kind of work it out. There's also a plastic piece here. You can kind of do the same thing. I'm just going to continue to push these fasteners in to get this freed up. And once you get to about this point, that's really all you need to go. And then up in the corner right here, there's going to be a 10mm bolt. We'll go ahead and get that pulled out too. So now we can get our fascia removed, and you're gonna start on the side. Good idea to have a friend helping you out with this. And I applied some painter's tape along everywhere where we're gonna be working, just to help protect it from getting scratched up or anything if something like that happens. So what you're gonna do is, if you look right here, there's 2 pieces of plastic, and you can take a trim tool and just kind of pry in between there. And while you're doing that, if you pull out like this, it'll actually start to release. So we'll just continue to work it around. We already got the other side loose. So we'll go ahead and just pull it out. Fascia should come off, and chances are pretty good we're gonna have some wiring that we need to disconnect. Looks like over here on the driver's side, we are going to have some. And with this connector, see if we can't figure this out here. It looks like this big red tab is gonna have to get pulled out. But, so you take the yellow one, pop that out, and you can slide this red one up. It'll separate, and then we can set our fascia off to the side somewhere safe. Now we need to remove these bumper horns here. So they're gonna be held in place by 3 15mm head bolts. So one there, and then one kind of on the inside here. So grab our socket, pull them all out. all those are removed, kind of just grab the bumper horn and pull it off, and set on the side. These are not going to be getting reinstalled. So if your Jeep has tow hooks in the front, if you go right underneath the vehicle and kind of look where the tow hook comes into, there's going to be a big nut on the back of it, and we're going to have to remove that nut. I'm just using a crescent wrench, and these aren't on there super tight, but we'll go ahead and just get these off. And there you go ahead and do it for the other tow hook as well. If we move over to our bumper beam, we're going to have 4 15mm head bolts we need to pull out to get this removed. And we're also going to have this little guy here over this stud. Just kind of a retainer clip. You can just take a screwdriver and just work that off. And then we'll grab our socket. And get all these bolts pulled out. Once all that hardware is removed, we should be able to grab our bumper beam, pull straight out, and set it to the side. Over here on just the passenger side, we have a few things we need to do. One of them being this 10mm nut. We need to pull that off. Get that out of the way, and then kind of pull our air box off there. And if you see, we have this rubber hose that connects to the air intake. We're going to disconnect it or separate it rather. And so we'll just grab our trim tool and pry that on out. Just over here on the passenger side, if you go into the engine compartment, kind of behind our headlight and just to the other side of our actual air box here where your air filter goes, if you kind of look down in this Divi, there's a plastic fastener right here, and we need to get that out. So pry the head out and then pry the base out. With those fasteners removed, we can remove this piece of our air intake system, and you're just going to pull straight out on it. It'll drop down. We can put it off to the side. Now if you look right here where this plastic air dam is, there's an opening that comes back. This can potentially get in the way of our base plate and make it a little tougher to install. So I'm just going to trim out a small portion of it here just to give us a little bit of extra room to work. Don't need to get too carried away with the trimming, just maybe an inch or so, and that should do the trick. Now we can start to put our base plate up. You're going to grab the factory bolts that originally went in here that was holding on those aluminum bumper horns, and you're going to take all 6 of them and take some red Loctite and apply some to the threads. So you want to get all those ready, and any of the hardware that we use to secure the base plate is going to get some of that red Loctite. But with that said, we'll go ahead and pick our base plate up. And get lined up here. Kind of hold it in place. We're going to take those bolts and get them started hand tight. Coming back to our bumper beam here, if yours has the tow hooks, we need to get them completely removed. So you can take a 16mm socket and pull out these 2 bolts. So we're gonna modify our bumper beam a little bit now. You may not have to do this in every circumstance. I know the vehicles that have an aluminum bumper beam, you probably don't need to. But if yours is steel like ours, you may have to. I held this up in place, and these edges here are just hitting our base plate, and we're gonna make it, you know, you're gonna have to fight it to try to get it on. So instead of doing that, I'm just gonna trim off this little portion here. That way it'll go on really easy. And pretty thick steel, so I'm gonna use an angle grinder. You could probably get away with using maybe a Sawzall or Dremel tool, something like that. So I go ahead and get this portion cut out on each side of our beam. Now we can grab the spacer block shims and get them on the back of our bumper beam. So instead of trying to hold everything together, I'm just going to take some packing tape and line it up with the holes there and just tape it to the bumper beam. And this should make it a little bit easier to kind of put this up and not really have to fight it too much. Now we can take that bumper beam and line it back up. Get it pushed through. Then on each side, we're just gonna get one started for now. You're gonna take one of these bolts, split lock washer and a flat washer. Don't forget your red Loctite, and get these going. That way the bumper beam support itself, then we'll come back and get the rest of the bolts started. So once we get all the bolts in hand tight, we're gonna have to remove a bracket. It's a lot easier to see on the other side of our vehicle, so we'll go over there and get that done. So if you look here, we're gonna have this bracket, and this is for those of you that have tow hooks on the front of your car. If you didn't have the tow hooks, you're not gonna have to do this. But with that said, we need to get our bracket out of the way. It'll be 3 bolts. There's one here, and then one here, and one just like it, just on the inside. With this one, it's a not kind of your standard head bolt. You can have a special socket, or what'll also work is if you just take a box wrench and take the side, this round side here, and this is an 11 millimeter, so it actually fits on there really good. And thankfully these aren't super tight. So we'll get this one pulled out. And then as far as the other 2 bolts up top go, those are just going to be your standard standard socket. And we'll pull those out using a 13 millimeter. With that one out, our bracket will come down, we'll get it removed. So now you're gonna grab the brackets that come with the kit. And these are side specific, so make sure to check your instructions. And the holes in it are gonna line up with the original bolt holes that we just pulled out. But this time we're gonna use new hardware. For the top 2, you're gonna take the smaller bolt, split lock washer and a flat washer. And get that started. Same one for the other side. And then for this one down here, just the thicker bolt, flat washer, split lock washer. And that one is gonna line up down here. With those in, I'm gonna snug them down. So for the top, I'll use a 13. And for this bottom one, I'll use a 17 millimeter. Now we can grab this large bolt, and that's actually gonna go through our base plate arm there, and at the very back of it, there's gonna be a hole in there. Best way that I found to do this is to take a magnet and run it through like this. And it's pretty much really difficult to see. You're just gonna kind of have to go by feel. So we'll push that through and then come around to the other side to get the rest of our hardware started on it. So here's where it comes through. Take the flat washer, split lock washer, and your hex nut, and get that started. Now we need to come back and tighten down all the hardware, so we'll just run through and snug everything down. Now we need to come back and torque down all of our hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can grab one here at eTrailer, or a lot of times go to your local auto parts store and they'll have one there available that you can rent. With the base plate all torqued down, we can take our air inlet here and simply just reinstall it the opposite way that we removed it. So at this point, it would be a great opportunity to install some of your other flat towing components like your wiring and braking system. And I say that because with the front end part, it gives you a lot more room to work, makes that process a lot easier. With that said, if you're not putting those on yet, or you already do have them installed, you would simply reinstall your fascia the opposite way that you removed it. So I'm gonna hold off on that, get all our other braking system and wiring parts on. Once I have that done, we'll come back and get the fascia on together. With everything else installed, now we can get our front fascia back on. If we flip it over, we are gonna have to remove these cutouts. That way they'll give us space for the base plate to clear. If you don't have these, you may have to trim. If that's your situation, refer to your instructions. There's usually a diagram or some type of guidance. But with that said, we're gonna have 3 plastic push pin type fasteners. You just push down on the center of them and they pop out. And then we're gonna have one screw. It's going to be 7mm. Get that removed, and these things just kind of lift right out. So I went ahead, held our fascia on the front of our vehicle, and we are going to have to trim out some openings here. That way our wiring and breakaway switch can pass through there. So I just held it in place and took a marker and kind of marked where we need to cut. And I'm just going to work my way around and trim these openings out. Kind of got the same deal going on over here for the cutouts for our breakaway switch. Just a little less material that we need to remove. Again, with an extra set of hands, now we can reinstall our fascia the opposite way that we removed it. So I'm going to try to get everything loosely lined up. Make sure everything looks good as far as our clearance and things like that go. And it looks like it's actually gonna fit pretty good. Really the only thing different when you're putting your fascia back on is these air deflectors here. And you're gonna have to rivet those back on. So they actually give you plastic rivets. And the way these are gonna work is you take it, and you feed it through, make sure it goes through all the panels. And you're gonna need a special tool like this one here. You can actually grab one of these right here at eTrailer. It's not this exact one, but does the same job. Or sometimes too, you could probably go to your local auto parts stores and usually they'll have one available to rent there. But so you're just gonna slide that over the rivet until it hooks. And that's what's gonna keep it secure. So we'll just do the same thing to get the rest of them on. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster base plate kit with removable arms on our 2021 Jeep Cherokee.